We have a great show in store for you tonight. It's a topic that is really near and dear to my heart. The question that we're addressing is whether you should consider genetic screening, carrier screening, before pregnancy. So on a personal note, my husband and I sat down as we were newlyweds and we both got tested. The lab that I selected for us was called Counsel because I had done a lot of research and I was really impressed by the quality of their product. Everyone wants to have a healthy pregnancy, but very few people actually know that this technology exists and how very, very important it is. So I will be asking questions of our very special guest tonight. We have Gabriel Lazarin here from Counsel. Gabriel, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
And you flew in all the way from San Francisco, did you not?
I did. As you mentioned, I'm with Counsel, and we're headquartered just south of San Francisco.
When I'm out in public, let's say on a cross-country flight, and I sit next to somebody who asks me what I'm doing, their gut reaction still is, oh, designer babies. And that's really common. Do you get that?
Yes, absolutely. Pretty much the first thing that they do say is involves test tubes, designer babies, eye colors, height. Ultimately, what every parent obviously wants is the healthiest child possible, who's going to have the most opportunities in front of them. And by learning about these types of conditions in advance, you can really help prepare for that.
And we should pause and talk about what exactly it means to be a carrier, because we keep using this term repeatedly. And do you have an easy definition? Otherwise, we can use this video as well.
Yeah, I think the video describes it
quite well.
Very well.
A carrier is someone who has one gene with a change, which we call a mutation, and one gene that's working correctly. As long as one gene in the pair can do its job, carriers are typically healthy and not aware of the mutation in their body. The good news is that the diseases included in our family prep screen mostly occur when both parents are carriers of the same disease. This means that you and your partner would have to be carriers of the same disease in order to have an increased chance of having a child with symptoms.
It just clarifies that, again, most people are carriers of some disease gene, but the chance of having two people be carrying the same disease gene and to pass it on to their offspring is actually quite low.
The other thing that I think is really important from that video that I mentioned is that typically when somebody is a carrier, they don't have any symptoms. And so therefore, most people don't know that they're carriers. The only way that you can find that out is by, in advance, is by doing a carrier screening test.
So did you use your own test from Counsel?
I did. So obviously I'm going to be a little bit biased, and I'm going to tend toward making the same decision that you did as also choosing Counsel's test.
So what was your process like? So you both decided, okay, this is the right test for us, we're going with Counsel. Then what?
We had the testing offered through our employer with the guidance of an outside physician who was overseeing the screening program.
And I imagine that you had blood drawn in an office somewhere or lab.
I actually used the saliva test option. So it was a bit more convenient for us, although blood tests are easy too, and we did plenty of those during the pregnancy process as well.
Were you nervous after all of your training? You'd been to graduate school, you'd counseled a million people about this test. Were you nervous getting your own test results?
Basically, don't worry until it's time to worry. But the reality of the matter is, yes, those moments when you're opening up, in my case, this website and just kind of waiting for that stuff to load, and then looking at the results and then reading them a couple more times just to make sure you got it right. Yeah, no, it's a bit nerve-wracking.
Do you mind sharing your results as kind of a show of solidarity and just to demonstrate how low a risk these results are in terms of genetic discrimination? I think that a lot of people have a lot of concern about that, and were this, a different type of test, I agree, there is much more concern. But for other reasons that we can get into a little bit later because of the inheritance patterns of the genes that we're looking at, I think that the risk of actually finding discrimination against ourselves or our children for being carriers is extremely low.
Yeah.
So in which case, I think it's really quite safe for us to share our own personal results with the world.
Yep.
Would you mind sharing yours?
I have no problem with it. So I was tested for about 100 diseases, and I was not found to be a carrier for any of them, according to the test. That is a common result. In fact, that's the most likely result, is that most people do come back negative, although a sizable portion of people will be found to be a carrier for something. In my case, that didn't happen.
That's pretty amazing.
That's good.
Yeah. In my case, I came back. It turns out that I'm a carrier for GJB2,
Okay.
which makes sense to you, but to the rest of the world, that's a gene that's associated with non-syndromic hearing loss. So should my husband also have had a variant in that same gene, then we would have had a chance at a baby who's deaf.
Yep.
And you had an example of a couple of families that have used your screen and gotten a surprising result, but have really benefited from it. Could you share maybe one of them?
One particular example or story is a family that was actually on their second pregnancy, and they discovered that both parents were carriers for a condition called Wilson disease. The parents found this out very, very early on. So they said, well, this is concerning. We want to learn more about this. They actually tested that pregnancy, and they found out that that pregnancy was not affected. It's very nice. Good reassurance for them. But being vigilant, they also you said, we have another child. Is there a chance that this child could be affected with that condition? And in fact, that child did inherit those genetic changes from the mother and father. So if we had fast forwarded decades, she would have been in that position of having irreversible organ damage because this wouldn't have been caught in any other manner until the
Intellectual
symptoms showed up.
disability, probably.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that is, but now because they had this information, they were able to make diet adjustments very early on. She was less than 5 years old at the time, so plenty of time to have avoided any significant damage. They are able to make environmental changes. And because of those changes, she's expected to live a completely normal life, just like anybody else.
Now, in their case, they had been tested while they were pregnant, but let's say that they'd actually been tested before getting pregnant the second time. Then, and let's say that it was a much more serious condition that's not compatible with life, maybe like Tay-Sachs, where the lifespan is dramatically reduced. In that case, there were other options for them as well, right? It's not simply a matter of terminating pregnancies. Getting this information really early actually would open up other doors for them.
The best timing for doing this test is prior to conception.
Why is it better before being pregnant?
Because when you have these results in advance, number one, you have a few more options in terms of your pregnancy planning. In this case, this couple was actually able to use one of those extra available options, which was in vitro fertilization with pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, which is a long way of basically saying that they are able to fertilize their eggs in a laboratory setting, use the husband's sperm, the woman's egg to fertilize and have an embryo, and then ensure to select an embryo that did not inherit that condition.
Phenomenal.
Exactly.
And had they not known that in advance, then that option just simply isn't on the table because they don't know to look for that
Exactly.
in the embryos.
Yes, finding this information out during pregnancy would have been much more of a stressful situation, as you might imagine.
Screening practices in the United States are, by my own personal opinion, very limited. So should you and I not have had this training, not have had awareness of this product, what would your experience have been like had you been living in not a major metropolitan area, but had you thought to go into your doctor before getting pregnant? What do you think your experience would have been?
One of the problems is quite obvious to everybody is that this is a quickly diversifying population in the U.S. So it's becoming harder and harder for people to answer correctly the question as to what their ancestry is.
So should you get it wrong, you're not being screened appropriately, and it's nobody's fault. It's just a very limited system.
This is a rapidly changing field, and what we're finding is that when you harness now this new technology and you apply it to carrier screening, you can significantly change, in a positive way, I think, what you can discover through a carrier screening test.
Any pearls of wisdom for our viewers that you'd like to leave with them?
This information is powerful, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's scary.
Thank you so much for sharing all this today. It's such a pleasure to have you
Thank
here.
you for having me here.
Thank you for flying across the country to be here. It's a real honor.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks.
For more information about Council's Family Prep Test, here's a link to their website. Here's a link to my website at www.vibrantgene.com. To be entered into this episode's raffle, simply send us an email to contact@vibrantgene.com, and one lucky recipient will receive 30 free minutes of a consultation with me. Our next episode will delve into the process of raising a child bilingually. Are there benefits to this? Also, are there any downsides or risks? Stay tuned to find out.